Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Daily Covfefe. Today is Thursday, September 5th. I'm Carter, and I'm joined, as always, by the bad mama Jamma and her little pup, Keri Smith and Tiger.
Good morning, Carter.
How you doing today?
I'm good. Carter, Tiger's usually always here. Sometimes you can't see him in the camera. Sometimes he's down beneath right here on the desk.
I got a picture this morning of where Tiger was hiding. So Keri, I did not get a chance to watch this yesterday, but did you know or see that CNN did what they were calling a climate crisis town hall?
I was only aware of it because you told me it was happening. Yeah.
7 hours, Keri. 7 hours. They did back-to-back town hall meetings with 10 Democratic candidates for 7 hours. That's what CNN thinks will boost their ratings.
That's the third ring of hell, right?
Yes, possibly. But I was wondering, this climate crisis, this is actually interesting because we just released a video about fracking, and which I know sounds very boring, but it's a good video with Daniel Richards. Go check it out. But I'm wondering, this climate crisis thing, 7 hours of a climate crisis town hall meeting, it reminded me of one thing. I'm going to play a clip for you to show you, Keri, just to kick off the discussion, to show you what it reminded me of. You ready?
Yes.
Mr. Danscombe. This message has been read in every newspaper, every radio, seen on every television. This message must preserve the entire bringing this country to realize the mistake of the age of Amelia. Having every man, woman, and child to understand how closely it affects. Why they need us!
Wow. Excellent choice.
Why they need us! Those are the Democrats.
Excellent choice.
That's the entire cathedral, by the way. That is what your overlords are thinking right now. I think that's why they love climate. The climate crisis is the best thing for statists because you can make it monstrously catastrophic, right? Because it could be the existence of the entire human race, right? It can be monstrously catastrophic. They can scienceify it so that you never actually can answer they don't actually have to answer any real questions. They can just kind of obscure. Scientists say we need Cory Booker, whatever it is. They can kind of hide behind science, and it's unsolvable. There will always be some reason to fear, whether it's a giant asteroid or whether there's some other freaking thing happening. There's always something. Humans, by their very nature, change the environment. That's how we survive. So something that we're going to do can always be taken to some extreme, like, oh my God, we're going to run out of helium. Which we might. We're going to run out of helium. We're going to run out of fossil fuels. We're going to run out of this. We're going to burn the atmosphere. We're going to anything. It doesn't matter. It's a never-ending crisis that you can get people to rally behind. And I think, in order to hang on to power, in order to have power over people, one of the things you can do is convince them that there is an existential threat and they should give up their liberty and just suck it up because it's life or death. And that's why I think CNN loves the climate change narrative personally. What do you think?
Well, when you said the Blue Cathedral wants they want us to need them, I know that you're also including within that the legacy media, like CNN. All of that's part of the cathedral. And yeah, they want. Look, I went to CNN right before we started to read an article about their proposed. This is before they did the thing about their proposed climate crisis day, and the little pop-up came up from CNN. It said, "Do you want us to summarize the news for you every day and give you the 5 top stories?" No, CNN, I don't.
No, Keri. That's the third circle of hell. Wolf Blitzer summarizing your news for you every day.
Don Lemon. Oh.
So, by the way, speaking of Wolf Blitzer, he kind of kicked off this thing. Oh, I found something. Maybe it will be interesting to our audience, but it's at least interesting to me. Did you know? I don't know why I didn't know this. CNN has an entire part of their website where they just do transcripts, so you don't have to watch anything. You can just go look at the transcripts, which I don't know why. I don't know why I didn't know that.
That's actually very helpful.
Yes.
I've used their transcripts before. They should all do that.
Yeah. So Wolf Blitzer kicked off the climate crisis 7-hour slog by blaming climate change for Hurricane Dorian, which is not how science works. And
So
then
anything that's naturally occurring but isn't fine to be bad, anything naturally occurring in Mother Nature is the result of climate change now. Is that what I'm hearing? If there's a hurricane, climate change. If there's a tornado, climate change.
Yeah.
It rains today and makes my day suck. Climate change.
If they can pin it on climate change, they will. So speaking of hurricanes, there's this like, oh, hurricanes are worse and there's more and blah, blah, blah. Here, just, hate to throw out some data. Here's a graph from NOAA of the Atlantic Basin hurricane frequency by year. 2005 was a biggie. It looks like it's tied with 1961. I don't see a big increasing trend here. Do you, Keri?
No, when does this start? I can't see the
1947 is the first one.
Yeah, there's
2017.
There's no trend there.
Yeah, the other thing to keep in mind is hurricanes in the past were only reported if they were sighted by ships, right? Until we had satellite imagery, hurricane reporting was different. So you have to take that into account. But yeah, so he's going to blame climate change on hurricanes on climate change because it's convenient to the narrative. So let's just see what some people were talking about. CNN has a conveniently, you don't have to watch the whole 7-hour thing. CNN has a convenient list of all of the things that are the takeaways from each candidate. So, by the way, one of the things going around from this that you'll see on Twitter is Joe Biden had like blood in his eye, and people are very excited about Joe Biden's bloody eye during the town hall. But that's unrelated to climate change.
I did see that. It looked like from a zombie movie or something.
Yeah. I don't know. Actually, I don't know that it's unrelated to climate change. It could, in fact, be the result of climate change. We should ask Wolf Blitzer. So let's see. Here's Cory Booker, because Cory.
I put this guy, by the way, Cory Booker. Oh, he's so dumb. I put him in the same category of annoying as like the worst 3 offenders, in my opinion, so far. The worst 3 would be Beto, Kamala Harris, and Cory Booker.
Beto is particularly annoying.
Beto is very annoying.
And you're right. The other day you mentioned he looked uncomfortable. He looks so uncomfortable all the time.
You know why I think this is? So this is a tangent, but if you like it, leave it in. It occurred to me watching him. He's okay. A lot of these people are acting. They're actors, right?
Right.
But he's a bad actor. That's why he looks uncomfortable. He's not a person who, I don't feel like I look at him and I don't see a person who's animated by truth and trying to speak truth. He's trying to find the right words to say. He makes me think a lot of my former self and of SJWs. And a lot of times I felt especially uncomfortable in my own skin, not just because, let's say I was public speaking or something that makes me nervous, not just because of that, but because I wasn't being authentic. I was like searching for the correct things to say. And he comes off to me as like a bad actor. Now, some people are good at acting, but he looks to me like he's someone who's not very good at acting. And so he's like, when they're asking him a question, he's like getting prepared, like, I'm getting ready to act now.
Yeah, he's totally inauthentic. He's
Yeah.
totally inauthentic. Well, so let's just take a look. Let's take a look. Here's Cory Booker, one of your other favorites.
First thing I'm going to do as President of the United States is go right to action. Climate is not a separate issue. It is the issue, the lens through which we must do everything that we do. It is an everyday mission. That means every one of my departments, every one of my agencies, every one of my cabinet members, from the Secretary of Defense to the Secretary of Agriculture, has to be coming up with an aggressive climate plan. I'm going to use the power of my pen to right away go after the executive orders that Donald Trump did to unravel the things that Obama did. I'm going to make sure that I go further than that, banning extractive oil fracking from public lands, going after the drilling and licensing, stopping them from our coasts, making sure that we're setting standards to put ourselves on a mission to have zero emission electricity by 2030 and a carbon neutral country by 2045. We can do these things and we'll do them. We'll get them done together.
Okay.
So
it's the lens through which everything must be viewed, which tells me it's an ideology.
Yep.
And that's also interesting because I wonder where social justice ideology fits in now for him. If he's honestly believes that climate is his number one ideology through which he views the world, where does social justice stuff fit in? Is it number 2?
Keri, are you trying to ask him to be consistent? I don't understand your logic.
Also, I don't like this particular pair of ideological glasses. I don't want to wear those.
So yeah, look, let's just point out a few things. One, they are autocrats. These Democrats are all talking about, Cory's not the only one, I will use executive fiat. I will use the power of the pen to rule you in the way that I think is best, while out of the other side of their mouth, often criticizing President Trump for signing executive orders that they don't like. But, interestingly enough, he mentioned fracking. So that's great. He perpetuated the bad fracking myth. And like you said, everything's about climate change. 2030 for zero emission energy is, I don't know if people understand how, you can call people anti-science who ask basic questions about climate change. There is almost nothing more ridiculous or anti-science or anti-engineering than the idea that we could get to 2030 emissions of zero through things like wind and solar, unless he's talking about nuclear, which he's not. By the way, none of them are talking about nuclear power. So speaking of nuclear, just a really quick aside, if you are claiming to care about the environment and you're pushing solar and wind over nuclear, you're not being rational. And I'm going to share this one article. I'm not going to go through it, but this is an article that a friend of mine posted on Imgur. He's actually one of our listeners. Nuclear power is green energy, and it's better than wind and solar in almost every way. He walks through. This guy used to design power systems in other countries. So he walks through and he talks about the capacity. He talks about the problems with wind, the supply. He talks about solar, and he talks about the waste associated with solar and the environmental impact of solar panels, both mining and disposing of solar panels. And he talks about spent fuel, of how to deal with nuclear and how to deal with the spent fuel. And the conclusion is, if you care about the environment, you should be advocating for nuclear power, not solar and wind, which are largely, let's face it, they're largely myths. They're fantasies. They're green fantasies of AOC. They're AOC's wet dream. That's how I would describe them.
Do you really think they're fantasies? I stayed at a house in Sedona, Arizona, that was solar, entirely powered by solar, and I'm trying to remember, they had something with the water system too, like the water was recycled, and
Yeah.
Why is that a fantasy?
Well, because first of all, where were you?
Sedona.
So lots of sun in Sedona, Arizona.
True.
Okay. Did they have a giant battery?
I don't know.
They must have. Did you have power at night?
I did.
Okay. So they mined a hell of a lot of lithium to have a massive battery somewhere to store that power, which is not super efficient. And all of the things, so that's nice for your house. What about all the things in the house? Could you have manufactured the dishwasher and the television and everything else? Could you have manufactured the car? Could you have manufactured the house itself?
You mean with solar? Could you have created those things?
No.
Okay.
You could not have. And the problem, and you're talking about Sedona, Arizona. First of all, that those solar panels, the solar panels are incredibly toxic. They were mined at extreme environmental expense, and they will be disposed of because they only last 10, 20 years. So then you'll have to get rid of them. And on top of that, we're not talking about every other industry being, and you're in Arizona. So what happens when you're not in a place with sun almost all day, right? So it's, people look at these little experiments like, oh, I can live in a cottage with just wood and a solar panel. Sure. But you can't get a solar panel without fossil fuels. Like you can't do all of the manufacturing necessary. So it's just kind of a silly notion. And he talks about, in this article, he talks about the environmental impact of windmills as well, which you wouldn't think is huge, but actually is quite bad. So let's just pick another person, Keri. Let's look at how Elizabeth Warren, and then we'll stop. I don't want to keep going through because I don't care about these candidates. Or maybe we can do Beto. Who would you rather listen to?
I actually, I was just saying to you off camera, I like Warren better than I do some of the others, and that doesn't mean I like her a lot. It's just compared to the others. What am I feeling? Let's do Beto because I want to hate on. I want to hate on. I want to hate on Beto more than I.
She's evil, but she's like authentically evil. She's not pretending. She's just like, yeah, I'm a bitch.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Oh my God. Well, you and I disagree on some things, and that would be one. So hold on. Honestly, she's like she's like the worst person on the planet. I'm pretty sure.
I don't think so, but okay. But it doesn't matter if we agree on that.
It totally matters.
So your climate proposal is unclear as to whether or not you support a carbon tax. What deters you from a carbon tax or from a cap and trade system? And if you are unwilling, what standards would you alternatively put in place to create a legally enforceable standard for emissions?
So we should certainly price carbon. I think the best possible path to do that is through a cap and trade system. There would be allowances granted or sold to polluters, not just in the energy sector, but in transportation as well as our industrial sector, cement, steel, the chemicals that we produce. There would be a set number of allowances that would decrease every single year because the clock is running. We have a little more than 10 years left. We don't have time to experiment. So I think that is the best possible path to ensure that there's a price for carbon and pollution in our economy, set the standard here, and then lead the globe, convene the other powers of the planet to make sure that they're doing their part as well. Thanks for the question.
Just to be clear, do you support a carbon tax, yes or no?
No, I think that a cap and trade is the best possible path. I think that's the best way to send the pricing signal to ensure that there is a legally enforceable limit. And so that's the path that I'm going to choose.
All right.
So that was Beto. By the way, it doesn't matter that they don't call it a tax. Cap and trade is basically a tax. It's just a different form of a tax.
What is cap and trade? I'm ignorant on this.
A cap and trade is here. I'll read the definition here. So basically, it is kind of a carbon tax, but it's proposed as an alternative to a carbon tax, but it's a tax. So basically, what the government does is they set a cap or a limit on the total level of certain chemicals or carbon dioxide that you can produce, right? But then you pay. Here, I'll read it. A cap and trade program can work a number of ways, but here are the basics. A government issues a limited number of annual permits that allow companies to emit a certain amount of carbon dioxide. Watch this. I'm going to break the law. The total amount permitted thus becomes a cap on emissions. Companies are taxed if they produce a higher level of emissions than their permit allows. Companies that reduce their emissions can sell or trade unused permits to other companies. So basically, it's just a tax, and it creates a separate industry of trading your tax credits. And actually, what will happen is people will buy legislators in order for their company to get higher caps than they actually need, so they can trade them, so they can make money. And it's just another. It's another tax. It's more government inserting itself into the economy, and why stop at industry? Why not tax us for breathing?
Here's my question. So is he talking about carbon, these cap and trade? Is this about carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide?
Carbon dioxide.
Okay.
What you breathe out. Right.
So I'm going to sound ignorant here because I am, but isn't it carbon monoxide that we're worried about in terms of air pollution?
It's carbon generally, but
Just
it's it's carbon dioxide, not carbon monoxide that we're worried about.
It's carbon dioxide that we're worried about.
Yeah. Well, I'm not.
But that they're worried about. Okay. Well, so what is like Los Angeles? I lived in LA for quite a while. The air quality is pretty bad. I mean, there would be like black soot that would collect on my windowsill.
This is why anecdotes are not fact. Anecdotes aren't statistics. This is the reason. LA is in a weird microclimate. There's always been smog in LA, even prior to cars. Like, it's gotten worse. Yeah, and a lot of it is cars in LA, absolutely. And a lot of that is carbon monoxide, I think, although I'm not an expert. But LA is also in a weird microclimate where the stuff gets trapped in the atmosphere and kind of stays there. LA's sunsets, my understanding, have been hazy since since we were in LA ever, right? Since people were there. That's the way LA is constructed. Whereas, in other spots, there's the wind current move particulate. In LA, the wind currents kind of and the mountains there kind of trap particulate. But yeah, no one's arguing that you shouldn't do something to help clean up the air of LA, or that it doesn't matter. No one's saying that the air quality doesn't matter. I mean, visit some cities in China. It's bad. But this is not the conversation that's being had. Beto's not saying the air quality in LA is causing people to get sick and we should do something about it. What they're arguing is that carbon dioxide is causing global warming, and global warming is catastrophic, and we have a short period of time left on this planet if we don't do something massive. And the reason,
so their underlying premise is that it's the humans' production of carbon dioxide is causing this thing called global warming. That's their underlying premise that they just assume that everyone takes for granted, right?
Well, don't you?
That it's man-made. Well, no, I don't know. I mean, I do. This is one of those areas that I just haven't done enough reading. And so when I started figuring out what I thought about things, like after I left my old ideology a couple years ago, it's like, it takes a long time to go issue by issue and try and read enough about it to feel like that I have enough of a knowledge to have an opinion. So I'm currently at a place where it sounds dumb, but if somebody asked me, do you believe in global warming? I'd say, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
No, I think that's actually fine. And we said this the other day, you can't be experts on everything. And I'm not an expert on climate change. And in a daily Kofefi, we're not going to make an argument about the intricacies of climate change. What we can say, though, is if you'll notice, it is being used as a crisis. It is being used to push more government control. We didn't play the Elizabeth Warren clip, but the Elizabeth Warren clip, she talks about, I think it was Don Lemon says, Trump wants to allow there to be incandescent light bulbs again and not have a government ban on light bulbs. And she rolls her eyes and he kind of jokingly says, well, are you saying that the government should tell people what kind of light bulbs they can buy? And she kind of laughs and she's like, no, obviously not. But then she proceeds to explain how the government precisely should do that. should tell people what kind of light bulbs to buy, what kind of straws they can use, what kind of everything that they can do, because it's such a crisis, blah, blah, blah. We all have to do our little part. And then she goes off and gets mad at the fossil fuel industry, which, the only thing that I think you might have a point about, or someone might have a point about the fossil fuel industry, is it shouldn't be subsidized. Other than that, the fossil fuel industry is responsible for our standard of living. But so the thing is, I don't want to get into details about the science of climate change. My point is, I guess, twofold. One is, do you know the science of climate change? And if you don't, all you're doing is parroting what scientists, quote, what politicians say scientists say, which is not even what all scientists say, but what is published in UN-sponsored reports by scientists with political agendas. And if you, even scientists who are in agreement with this, don't agree with the alarmist, sky is falling, catastrophic nature of plans like the new Green Deal. So, but some of them do, I'm sure. Scientists aren't one entity. It's like intersectionality. Black people aren't all one thing. Women aren't all one thing. Scientists are not all one thing. They have disagreements about the right ways to go about combating climate change, and they have disagreements about the nature of climate change. So the other thing, though, Keri, is
also I remember it seems like they keep changing what they're saying about this climate crisis, right? Like it used to be, remember, it was like global cooling for a while in the 70s.
Yeah.
So in the 70s, wait, what were you going to say?
No, I remember it was global cooling. The next ice age is coming. All the scientists agree.
All the scientists agree, ice age coming, global cooling. Then there was the big ozone hole in the 80s. Mm-hmm. Like you got to quit using hairspray because you're making a hole in the ozone. And then it was global warming, and now it's climate change. I mean, it just keeps, but some of these things are contradictory, and this 1970s wasn't that long ago.
No. Well, so look, from a layperson's perspective, without understanding the science, one thing you can do is you can ask yourself, what standard are they using? And to me, and this ties into actually the show that we released with Daniel Richards earlier today, the standard should be human flourishing. So an environment is an environment for something, right? The environment isn't like, there's not an environment. An environment is inherently, that word, that concept is a relational concept. There's not an environment. It's an environment in relation to something. The environment that your dog is in right now is different than yours. You're both in the same house, but his environment includes you and things you do for him, and he's closer to the floor, right? Your environment is slightly different. You can go outside, you have internet access. Like the environment is in relation to a being. And so when we talk about the environment, the question's like, whose environment? The environment for viruses? The environment for slugs? The environment for the bald eagle? The environment for an exotic bird you like in the tropics? Or the environment for humans? The human environment should be the standard, and that's what should matter. And all of this discussion should be around what is best for humans. And when you worry,
I think a lot of people on the left, now I'm just speaking from personal experience and anecdote, but a lot of people on the left, I think, they expand their dissatisfaction with being, or hatred for being, or their nihilism.
Self-hatred, perhaps?
Self-hatred, and they expand that to the human race in general. I remember, and so they don't actually care about environment for humans. I remember thinking and probably voicing out loud that humans are a virus on the planet and it'll be better when we're all gone.
Right.
Like, how ridiculous is that in retrospect that I ever thought that?
Right.
But
That's a statement of self-hatred.
yeah, it is. But a lot of it is like that. I mean, you see people, left like activists doing TED Talks about how we should stop having babies,
Right.
you know, and
Right.
it's just this whole kind of this plays into, we've talked about this before, but it's very common in some of my old circles, this like hatred for reproduction, hatred of children. I love animals, but I hate kids, that kind of thing.
Right.
I know a ton of people on the left like that. It's
Yep.
weird. It's a little weird.
Yeah, and I think it's important to figure out for yourself what side you're on in terms of humans. Are humans your standard? Is human prospering your standard? Fine. If it is, then we can have real debates about the environment, the human environment, and what's good for humans. But if your standard is that the environment separate from humans has some intrinsic value by itself, which is just ridiculous and stupid. Like, why doesn't the environment on Mars have intrinsic value? Why not the environment on Saturn? Why not the environment of Venus? Like, what's so special about the quote environment of the Earth, if not for supporting human life? That's why we care about what it's like, right? Or it's why we should. So I think people probably should figure out, and one of the most important things I think is to see through this and to figure out, like, when you hear these people talk about climate change and a climate crisis, are they coming from the perspective that a human being is a burden to the universe, or a human being is a beautiful, wonderful, great resource and gift from the universe or from God or from nature, however you want to say it? Like, are humans to be celebrated as individuals, or are humans to be hated and
Controlled,
despised, just controlled and vilified? And are they a blight, or are they wonderful? And I think one of the major differences between mindsets here is that there is a group, like you said, in Western civilization, fundamentally, one of the reasons we have individual rights, I think, and this comes, I'll give Christianity the credit, this comes largely from the work of, my understanding, I'm not an expert here, but it comes largely from the work of some later Christian theologians who talked about the soul being valuable. And it's this idea that human beings have value. Human beings are the standard. Everyone, the king, peasants, and everyone in between has value as a human. And there's an appreciation for human life. That when you say, hey, people should have individual rights, there's an appreciation for human life, for every human life at that point. And for this, not only the sanctity of that life, but the agency that humans have, and the self-ownership and control that they deserve to be given or allowed to continue having. And so there's that mindset. And then there's the mindset of, like, humans are a virus and a pain in the ass, and they're dumb and they're horrible and they're a liability, and they should be controlled and used as tax cattle and not allowed to propagate and reduced and oppressed, and, like, that's what we should do to humans because humans are horrible. Those are the two kind of, it sounds extreme, but those are kind of the two perspectives. And by and large, the climate crisis people fall into the latter camp.
I agree. Yeah, I think there's something interesting there.
And just to be clear, Keri, I'm not saying that carbon dioxide doesn't create a greenhouse effect and warm the earth. From my understanding, again, layman, looks like that kind of is true. Looks like
yes,
carbon dioxide.
Yes. The question though, is the impact of man.
Well, there's a bunch of questions. One of them is how much of that is humans? And I think it's pretty clear that at least some significant portion is due to human activity. Sure. I think, again, not an expert here, but layman, yeah, I think some of that is, at least a significant portion of that is due to humans. But here's the other question that you need to ask, which is, what do you give up? So let me rephrase this. Is the environment for humans better now, or is it better without adding that carbon to the atmosphere? So let's say that we continue on our present course and we really do all these alarmist stuff happens and we increase the average temperature of the Earth by several degrees Celsius. And ice caps melt and the ocean rises and shorelines change and some places get very, very hot. Is that bad for humans? Well, I think we have to start asking some questions like, would we have more arable land? Would it be good for plants? Carbon dioxide, which they are calling a pollutant, is literally plant food. It's actually very hard to supersaturate a greenhouse with carbon dioxide because the plants start consuming, they grow wildly. You get more and more plant life. And it starts to consume. My understanding is it's logarithmic consumption. So like it gets difficult to really increase carbon dioxide beyond certain levels. I think you can. I'm not a scientist, but the point is there's a balance here. We've seen a greening of the Earth, so we have more green on the Earth now than we have in the past, probably as a result of carbon dioxide. And the question is, well, what if more of northern areas and extreme southern areas become farmable? Is that good for humans? Can we deal with hot weather? Can we deal with shifting shorelines? Is that better for humans? Because the alternative, Keri, is catastrophic. What we never ask ourselves is the cost of making energy more expensive or limiting energy consumption. Energy consumption is the reason for our standard of living. It's the reason we have long lifespans. It's the reason for modern civilization. And we take it for granted that you can flip on a light switch and get light, or that we can have refrigeration, or that we can have hospitals that are powered, or like all the things that we do, all the things that you see in front of you on your desk or look around, all these things that are manufactured take an enormous amount of energy. And all that stuff makes human life better. Most of it makes human life better. And if you cut down on energy consumption, that will result in a decrease in human flourishing. It will result in more average deaths, and it will be bad for humans. Energy consumption is great for humans. It's how we have thrived. So you have to look at the other side of the equation. Okay, there's a risk here. What's the risk of not having fossil fuel burning? That's a huge risk. It's a huge risk. And no one ever talks about it.
I was just thinking, can you imagine the debates if the candidates talked about this kind of stuff? Like if they talked about real thing, the real questions, and it just, I don't know. It's such a political theater watching all this. I mean, it's entertainment. That's all it is.
It is. It's political theater. But I don't think they even believe their own rhetoric, just to be clear. And you brought this up the other day. What did the Obamas run out and do? They bought a $15 million house on Martha's Vineyard. If they believed the sea levels were rising, then they would believe that house would be covered up in ocean in a few years.
Yeah.
There's no way they would spend $15 million buying that house.
Let's put $15 million underwater, guys.
Right. So I don't think they even believe this. This is just a way to control the population by having, the globalists are freaking out. It's the other reason they love the issue is it's not a national issue. It's a global issue. Andrew Yang talked about making the United States responsible for fixing it globally. Like they love the global idea. So climate change is their perfect issue, but none of them actually get into the cost benefit analysis from a human flourishing perspective. And the science it's not settled in the way that they make it sound. Yes, it's settled that carbon dioxide can create a greenhouse effect. Yes, we know that some of that is man-made. All these models predicting catastrophe in the end of the world, that's not settled science. You should be allowed to ask questions, but no one is allowed to ask those questions. You get vilified as a science denier, and people scoff, and you'll know it as they can't answer the same questions that you would ask. They can't answer them either. If you ask them questions like, well, what is the relationship between CO2 production and plant life? And what does that graph look like? And is there some point at which there's a maximum saturation of CO2 in the atmosphere and it becomes you get homeostasis again? They don't know. So I'm sure some scientists know, but people don't know. People act like it's a religion.
Yeah, people just repeat it as, that's what I was saying, all these candidates, I guess, are taking as fact that, it's something that they probably can't articulate if you ask them these questions. They can't explain why they believe what they believe. They can't explain why they believe what they believe. I don't know, it's interesting. We should do at some point, and not soon because there's a lot of other stuff on our plate, but at some point I do want to read a lot about the science part of this. I know we're not talking about the science part of it. I do want to do an episode on climate change.
Yeah, I want to read about the science part of it also because I don't have as much information as I'd like. But I do know that the standard they're using is not human flourishing. I know I'm not hearing the conversation framed in the way that I'm framing it to you right now. And I know that it's obviously political because when you propose solutions that go against their political ideology, they are dismissed. When you say things like, hey, all this overconsumption, all this production of stuff that's contributing to our carbon footprint, a lot of that's enabled by deficit spending. How about we enter into a period of austerity, tighten our belts, and live within our means as a country for a while, because all this deficit spending is consumption now that we're going to pay the price of, not just economically, but according to your concerns, environmentalists, we're going to pay the price for that from an environmental perspective in potentially a catastrophic way, according to AOC and these people. How about we do that? No. Can't do that. That's no. We have to be able to spend more than we tax, and we have to be able to tax more. Okay. It's clear what the agenda is. Yeah. The agenda is Marxism. The agenda is it's globalism. It's authoritarian globalism. That's the agenda. They want to be in charge. And all this is it's just a crisis to get you riled up so that you remember why they need us. That's what they want.
I would be interested to see some stats on the difference between conservatives and liberals when it comes to personal recycling and things like that. I don't know. I haven't read any of these stats, but I wonder if they are similar to the stats about personal charitable giving, because conservatives give more money. They choose to voluntarily give more charitable money than liberals do. Whereas I think liberals tend to think, well, it's the government's job to take it from us and just redistribute it. I wonder if it's the same with recycling, because a lot of the people, not all, but a lot of the people I know who are really religious about recycling and really hardcore about it are conservatives and libertarians.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, simply because part of being a leftist is abdicating personal responsibility generally. Everything is about, you've done your job. You can wipe your hands of the situation or pat yourself on the back simply because you've advocated that the government to do something. That makes you a good person. You're done. You can, go home and, do whatever bad things you were doing before. Whereas I think people who advocate personal responsibility, if they care about this stuff, they're out doing charity and that kind of thing. My understanding, by the way, is a lot of times, though, separate show, a lot of times recycling actually is not worth it, both economically and for the environment. It's actually it spends more energy trying to convert the it's recycling is another farce in many ways, not always, but I think we could do another show on that. But
okay, don't dispel all of my beliefs in one episode.
I didn't really dispel anything. I just asked you to ask questions. So I'm not making a claim about any of this. I'm just saying ask the questions.
I'm just kidding. Well, okay. Thank you guys for tuning in to Daily Covfefe on Unsafe Space. If you like it, please hit the like button. Please subscribe on YouTube and share the video. That helps us get more viewers.
And also, if you want to contribute financially, we have merchandise on our website, unsafespace.com, and we also have a Subscribe Star instead of a Patreon.
Awesome.
And we're doing book club on September 15th. If you haven't already started reading George Orwell's 1984 and you want to be part of the video discussion, go ahead and you should start reading it now.
Okay, thank you for watching. See you later.